So the other day on Twitter, a random member of the Minecraft fandom posted an ill-advised tweet about ignoring content creator boundaries, and instead of it staying safely within the bounds of fandom discourse, it somehow breached containment to the point where some of the biggest content creators on the platform were all chipping in to give their own take on the drama of the day. I mean, I'm talking about creators like legendary Minecraft modpack YouTuber Lagundo of UHC Generations, famous Catgirl speedrunner and Sheep Fricker Rattles, even published author Missy Cooper from CBS's Young Sheldon. Wait a minute. Well, big surprise, I, a shamelessly unscrupulous Minecraft YouTuber myself, also wanted to get my own 2 cents in on the recent controversy. But I don't want this to be just another toothless tube news drama recap video where I make a milquetoast statement on the subject without actually saying anything at all. I want to seriously and sincerely analyze this controversy with critical intent because, after watching the Minecraft community lose its mind over this innocuous little post for the past few days, I actually do have something of substance to say. And that something is... You all do know this is the internet, right? You know, the internet. The place where you can say, do, and post pretty much anything you want. The constantly convening, ceaselessly churning public forum of our time. Whether or not we like it, or whether or not we think it should even exist, we all have to encounter content online every day that violates our personal boundaries, or even something as benign as our sensibility of good taste. And I think this recent Minecraft YouTuber drama gives us a good excuse to critically investigate how we ourselves engage with the content we consume, because now more than ever we have to be increasingly careful of how we engage with one another on the internet when we already share a community. So if I might be so bold, in this video I want to provide you with a couple rules of engagement to guide you. In this video, I want to break down the initial controversy that started all this drama by using a formal philosophy of language framework to understand why this recent wave of discourse seems to be more of a semantic misunderstanding than anything genuinely malicious. Then I want to briefly cover the contemporary history of how content creator boundaries have been forged and reconstrued in current day, and why I think both creatives and fans could serve to deepen their understanding of the murky nuance at the core of this issue. Because yes, I do think there's more nuance at play here than anyone is willing to admit, and I do think that nuance is worth discussing. Without further ado, this is how Minecraft content creator boundaries don't work. In order to unpack this latest drama, we're going to do a little philosophical investigation to help us break down just what went awry in all the controversy, and analyze how all of its participants ended up creating more misunderstandings than they solved. Very briefly, as discussed in my previous video on Minecraft YouTuber drama, there are essentially 2 different ways to interpret the meaning of any given statement. First, sentence semantics is basically just what the sentence means in a very literal or conventional sense when you break it down into a set of propositions. You've probably heard of semantics before, but it's less likely you'll have heard of pragmatics, which is essentially the effect of a given sentence upon its utterance. Pragmatics provides us with a different conception of meaning than semantics. Rather than being grounded in internal mental states and intentions, which cannot manifest and be readily known in the outside world, pragmatics observes the actual effect a sentence has on the world around it when it is uttered, because this effect is still a pivotal part of meaning too. So now, with this in mind, if we return to the initial tweet that sparked all this controversy and analyze it on a level of mere semantics, you could argue that this tweet is implying content creators shouldn't be allowed in spaces like Tumblr or Archive of Our Own. You could argue that this in turn means that content creators shouldn't be allowed to engage with their own fandom, which is a statement I do disagree with. Content creators should be allowed to participate in their own community. However, on a pragmatic level, what this tweet is really trying to argue for is tagging material that pushes content creator boundaries, so that if creators are in those spaces, they can still easily avoid it for the sake of their own comfort. That's it. Pragmatically, that's literally all this tweet is trying to say. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem like a completely unreasonable proposition. It certainly doesn't seem like something worth weaponizing a fanbase to dogpile a random kid over. A dogpiling that ended with death threats and a downed account, hence why this was the best screenshot of the initial tweet I could find. And just like how this initial tweet can be analyzed on both the level of semantics and pragmatics, so too can the responses of every content creator who quote retweeted it to give their own takes. Semantically, these tweets are providing a completely reasonable proposition about maintaining respect for content creators and their boundaries. But pragmatically, these tweets are calling to attention the original poster in such a way that the door is open for people to flood this poster's mentions with further harassment and haranguing over a post that seems almost patently innocuous by comparison. I agree with the general pragmatic gist of the original post, but not its specific semantic contentions. I agree with the semantic intention behind the content creator collective's response, but not the pragmatic after effect of publicly shaming some freshly minted teenager who didn't know better. I disagree with the notion of fandom-only spaces and intentionally violating content creator boundaries, but agree that content creators should also be setting their own boundaries with tag blocks and timeline curation. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Unfortunately, my analysis isn't going to get any less technical or any less nuanced, so if you're already not a fan of the way I talk or think about stuff, you should probably save yourself some time and just close this video now. It's here where we need to get even more technical and introduce a second dichotomy, the dichotomy I believe to be at the heart of our current controversy, the dichotomy between normative accounts and positive or descriptive accounts of reality. A normative account of reality says that this is the way things ought to be. It tries to establish a norm. In this case, tweets like those made by major content creators are normative accounts, as they are trying to advance a vision of what they believe to be the appropriate way for fans to engage with their content. Here's the thing. I agree with the normative account. In principle, content creator boundaries should be honored unconditionally by their community. But what I don't think the content creators replying to this tweet understand is that this tweet isn't meant to be a normative account of content creator boundaries. It's a positive one. A positive or descriptive account merely posits or describes a statement on the way things actually are in the status quo, the way the world is now. So while normatively we can say that content creators should always have their boundaries respected, it's descriptively true that people just do ignore them. People will do whatever they want, and when they do, this tweet suggests that boundary-breaking content should still be kept out of public websites with no tagging system that can sequester it, and shared on forums like Tumblr and AO3 so that it can be easily sorted and blocked by content creators. I think that actually seems like a pretty fair proposition. For the remainder of this video, it'll be the descriptive account that I'm focused on, because unlike the normative account, I think the descriptive account actually provides both content creators and their fans with some genuine utility when it comes to how we interact with boundary-breaking content and where we can go from here. Now at this point, I think it's very important for me to clarify something. When I say boundary-breaking content, I'm not referring to bigotry and genuine infringements of or threats upon bodily autonomy. I'm not referring to works and depictions of content creators that reflect those attitudes in the form of intentionally directed homophobia, transphobia, sexism, racism, and any other fashion of targeted hate speech or revenge porn. Hate speech is, by its very definition, designed to segregate and subordinate, implicitly creating a class of lessers through the performance of a hateful speech act. It isn't subject to considerations of free speech in that same way when the end towards which it is directed is the devaluation of freedom. That obviously should be treated with zero tolerance, and those aren't the sort of cases I'm analyzing here. What I'm referring to when I say the phrase boundary-breaking content is a class of more innocuous test cases for the grounds of content creator boundaries, like shipping, for instance. Specifically, cases of shipping that don't infringe upon the prior constraint I've just outlined, but still toe the line of content creator boundaries. In order to illustrate the difference between the violation of an unconditional moral boundary and the breaking of a boundary designed for mere comfort, I want us to take a little field trip back in time to two historical incidents that set the tone for contemporary conceptions of how the content creator fandom relationship functions. Which means, unfortunately, we're gonna be talking about Call Me Carson and SMPLive. Prior to 2019, in the Minecraft community, the lines between content creators and fandom were significantly blurrier. People could draw whatever slash art they pleased of the OG Team Crafted guys. The Yogscast literally read their own fanfiction. The way we see boundaries as sanctified, holy, and absolute nowadays would be a completely foreign concept in the early days of this community, because this was an era marked by blatantly and flagrantly disregarding them. SMPLive changed all that, like it did so many other things in the Minecraft community. Perhaps the two defining controversies of the SMPLive fandom that occurred during the server's lifespan in 2019 were the SMP Rampa debacle and the C-Scoop water bottle confession. The former involved a work of fanfiction written about SMPLive members inserted into the premise of Danganronpa, a Japanese visual novel where players in a series of murder games were forced to get away with killing one another to escape with their lives. Prior to Call Me Carson's statement, other SMPLive streamers knew about the fic and even made light of it. They certainly harbored no ill will towards its teenage writer. Carson's statement changed the entire tone of the discourse. In a widely circulated livestream calling out the author directly, he attempted to issue an outright prohibition on works that violated his own boundaries. This watershed incident, whether you even know of it or not, is the moment that informed how the modern Minecraft fandom forges boundaries with a given content creator. That creator's own discomfort is put at the forefront of the discourse, causing countless schisms of infighting within their community and merciless harassment of the predominantly adolescent community members whose perceived slights violate them. Ironically, this statement about respecting boundaries was made by a man who would later take advantage of the power differential allowed by his platform to predate upon members of his own audience. The second of these two controversies, the C-Scoop water bottle incident, involves someone on the SMPLive Confessions Twitter account admitting to stealing streamer C-Scoop's water bottle while he was visiting TwitchCon. However, by comparing both of these disparate dramas, we can see yet another dichotomy beginning to emerge. The water bottle incident is tantamount to infringement on bodily autonomy, and is thus a violation of a boundary I believe is unconditional. That's why there seems to be a much more universal intuition that this specific incident is unsettling. Keeping that in mind, however, the fanfic appears almost positively benign and much more conditional by comparison. It's still strange, and you and I might not like it, but it isn't as viscerally upsetting or dangerous. Do you see why I say there's a nuance here? One of these things is not the same as the other. There is a difference of degree, one I believe to be significant. The former is aberrant behavior that should be condemned. The latter is a kind of creative expression that might not be palatable for some, but like shipping, that doesn't mean it should be suppressed or censored out of existence just because we don't want to see it ourselves. At least, I don't think it should be. Coincidentally, at around the same time as these two prior incidents taking place on SMPLive, Hermitcraft member Zombie Cleo was harassed off Tumblr with death threats, and all for the crime of suggesting that rather than community members internally shaming pro-shippers who played within the fine lines of content creator boundaries, they should simply block them and not interact with their content. Eagle-eyed viewers will note that Cleo's Tumblr post has the same pragmatic effect as the tweet that instigated the Twitter drama just a few days ago, albeit with a more clearly articulated and agreeable semantic intention. Cleo's position on audience interpretation isn't exactly a new one. In fact, you could argue it stems from one of the most famous tactics in artistic and literary analysis, the death of the author. Under this paradigm, even if the author isn't dead, they might as well be. Once their artistic work is released to the public, they simultaneously release any claim they might have over how it is received or interpreted. To put it another way, an author, artist, or content creator can control the semantic content of their work, but they can't control how people perceive its pragmatic effects. The problem, of course, is that content creators are not dead. They are, in fact, very much alive and very much terminally online. But, and this is where my position skews slightly radical, so long as both sides respect one another's boundaries, is that really so bad? Again, I'm giving a positive account of content creator boundaries here, not a normative one. I posit that it is genuinely impossible to completely avoid every instance of brushing against boundaries online, especially in a creative sphere.
I wish I could be everywhere that people are doing art, so that I could see it before the public sees it, and I could keep them from being titillated or aroused or in any way confused by the counterculture. I wish, but I'm just one senator. I wish.
When Dante wrote the most famous self-insert fanfic in all of human history, Virgil had been cold on the ground for centuries, and now his depiction of the layers of hell has become one of the single most influential works in contemporary pop culture. And just as Virgil surely did when Dante started rolling off the presses, I know Dante's likely rolling in his grave at the thought of Vivzy Pop's Has-Been Hotel. But what can Dante do? He published his Divine Comedy. He can't control how it's perceived. When Star Trek fans were reinventing nerd fandom and fanfiction from first principles all over again in the age of television, I sincerely doubt if they consulted Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner first to see if they were comfortable with shipping. Throughout the whole of human history, it has been wholly unreasonable for any creative or creator to try and assert complete and total control over the way in which people interpret their art. Art is, by its very nature, up for interpretation. And if it's impossible to stop people from perceiving you and your work however they want, it's just as futile an effort to stop them from depicting you however they want. Take this very video itself for a further example. I know plenty of other content creators are going to disagree with my assessment that there's some degree of unspoken nuance to this issue. I can't control how they, or even you watching this, will choose to interpret the arguments I'm making over the course of this video. You could assume a worst-case, bad faith scenario and interpret what I'm saying to be a hardline stance totally against the concept of content creator boundaries altogether. You could argue that I'm saying that they should be completely ignored and that everything is totally relative. I'm not. I'm not saying that at all, but you could say that, and I can't really stop you. Then again, my philosophy on the internet is the same as Danny DeVito's in Always Sunny in Philadelphia. A content creator is like a piece of trash. If you find something in the dumpster, you can do whatever you want with it. If that disgusts you, don't go dumpster diving. My personal philosophy is that if you just don't like something and it doesn't violate those earlier constraints on genuinely problematic behavior outside of artistic license and liberty, then it's on you to curate your experience of the internet in such a way that you won't be interacting with it, because you can't stop it from existing. And if you're willing to do that, then it's on those who follow you to respect that intentional act of curation. The only other alternative to learning to coexist is the alternative posed to us by the fascist occupying force currently in control of the United States of America, which is total censorship of the internet and the end of all anonymity and freedom of online speech. Right now, we are mirroring these same puritanical patterns of repression in microcosm, projecting them out across our own spaces, policing ourselves when the truth is, regardless of how we feel about one another, we all share the same community. And that means we need to get along. So if I could close this video with a radical idea, it would be to acknowledge the human complexity of even those you disagree with, because that complexity is mutual. It's something we all share and something we forget with how often we misinterpret and misunderstand one another. We are all but players on the grandest, greatest, vastest stage of them all, each of us with our own special names that make the screen glow, each of us playing a role. It's important for fans to respect content creator boundaries, yes, but it's also important for content creators to realize the unspoken cost of being perceived is surrendering your control over the perception of others. The least both parties can do is act accordingly in light of this fact. Not by tiptoeing around each other, nor by putting a disproportionate weight on accommodating the content creator's perspective, nor even by disregarding boundaries entirely and saying that anything goes, but by treating boundaries as literally and merely what they are, as boundaries. A boundary is not a prohibition, even if you wish it was. It is a wall, one you have to put up yourself. Boundaries should obviously be honored by the fandom, but they exist for the cases where they aren't respected, not for the ones where they are. Tags and warnings serve to separate sects of the fandom, projecting and preserving the experience of both content creators and fans. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but in such a ridiculously repressive time, I don't feel compelled to contribute to the defining issue of our day even further. I understand why other content creators would be deeply uncomfortable with certain depictions of the characters they play. It's easy to say that normatively you should never infringe on content creator boundaries, a statement I do admittedly agree with. But this normative account falls short of the messiness of reality. And so, insofar as that's true, setting reasonable boundaries with the knowledge in mind that these boundaries and norms are maintained by respect and fandom discretion alone seems like a reasonable compromise. I think that if content creators can just give the grace to allow that which they might be uncomfortable with to exist, so long as it doesn't infringe upon their own spheres of experience and influence, maybe, just maybe, the people creating that art can give them the grace to keep it away from public purview. It's the fandom's job to tag their art appropriately, and a content creator's job to heed those tags. Content creators have to be the adults in the room about this, since most of their following aren't. And what that means is being realistic and showing some grace. It's not a perfect compromise, not by any means, but I think it's better than what we have now. Way better. better than self-flagellating and repressing and infighting ourselves to death while the outside world reviles the fact that any of us even exist at all. Better than ostracizing community, shaming, and suppressing. And is that really so much to ask? Is it really so much to ask that we just give one another a chance? Of course it is. Of course I know that's too much to ask. This discourse has been relitigated over and over again since the dawn of the internet and fandom spaces, and that isn't going to stop anytime soon. I was being purely facetious in the introduction. I know full well this video isn't going to be the piece of armchair anthropological analysis that finally cracks the case. All I want to do is acknowledge that on this very messy issue, there's at least a little more nuance than maybe we're willing to admit. In this crazy block-built little corner of the internet, we are all members of the same community of practice, and owe a responsibility to one another to engage in that community respectfully. We could all stand to be better and kinder to one another, and in an age defined by fascism, repression, and unfathomable cruelty, maybe the mere act of showing kindness, even in the face of that which we personally find distasteful, maybe, just maybe, being kind to cringe, really is the real punk rock. If you disagree vehemently with the contents of this video, or find my analysis objectionable, leave a comment down below. Or, if you'd like, I have a Discord server I literally just started, and I made a whole channel where you can fight with me about all the stupid stuff I've said over there. That'll do it for this one. I'm Frostbite Freeman, and until next time, stay frosty.